Jake Morrison woke up to the sound of his door being torn from its frame. Before he could react, 4 figures in silver armor surrounded his bed. Their skin shimmered like moonlight on water, and each of them had 4 arms. One of them pressed the device against his neck, and the world went dark. When Jake opened his eyes again, he was lying on a smooth surface that felt like warm glass. The ceiling above him was impossibly high, decorated with patterns of light that moved like living things. He sat up slowly and found himself in a room larger than his entire research station back on the colony world. A door opened without a sound, and a woman walked in. She was tall and graceful, with silver skin and 4 arms like the soldiers who had taken him. Her eyes were completely black, like pools of deep space. She wore robes of flowing white fabric that seemed to float around her body. "Jake Morrison," she said. Her voice was calm and precise. "I am High Princess Elvira Kethon, ruler of the Valari Empire. You are aboard my personal vessel, currently traveling toward our home world." Jake's heart was beating fast, but he forced himself to stay calm. He was a xenobiologist. He had studied dozens of alien species. He knew that showing fear could be dangerous. "Why did you take me?" he asked. Selvira walked closer and sat down on a chair that seemed to grow out of the floor. "My species is dying, Jake Morrison. Every generation, fewer children are born. Those who are born grow weaker. Our scientists have studied this problem for 300 years, and they have found no solution within our own biology." She paused and looked at him with those dark eyes. "But they found something interesting in human genetics. Your species carries certain markers in your DNA that could save us. When combined with Valari genetics, these markers could produce healthy, strong children who would carry our civilization forward." Jake felt cold despite the warm air. "You want my DNA? I want more than that," Selvira said. "I have 3 daughters. They are the future of our empire. I need you to be their partner, to live among us, to help create the next generation of Valari rulers." "You're asking me to be breeding stock," Jake said flatly. Selvira tilted her head slightly. "I am asking you to save a species. Billions of lives depend on what happens in the next few generations. Your genetic contribution could ensure our survival." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see stars streaming past as the ship traveled faster than light. He was already far from home. "What if I refuse?" he asked. "Then I will return you to your station," Selvira said. "But you should know that the Valari Empire provides medical technology to human worlds. Our treatments save millions of your people every year. If you refuse, that cooperation will end." Jake turned around sharply. "You're threatening to let humans die if I don't agree?" "I am explaining the situation clearly," Selvira said. "I do not enjoy this position, but I am responsible for my people, just as your leaders are responsible for yours. We all make difficult choices." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry would not help him. He needed to think. "I want to meet your daughters," he said, "before I decide anything." Selvira nodded slowly. "That is reasonable. Come with me." She led him through corridors of crystal and light, past Valari servants who stared at him with expressions he could not read. Finally, they entered a large room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. 3 women stood waiting. They all had the silver skin and 4 arms of their species, but each one looked different from the others. The first one was tall and stern, with her hair pulled back tightly. She looked at Jake like he was an insect she had found in her food. "This is my eldest daughter, Lyanna," Selvira said. "She's 120 years old and serves as my chief advisor." Lyanna said nothing. Her black eyes were cold. The second daughter was smaller and softer in appearance. She held a tablet in 2 of her hands and seemed nervous. "This is Myre, my middle daughter. She's 95 years old and oversees our cultural archives. Myra gave Jake a small nod, but did not speak. The third daughter was the youngest, and she was the only one who smiled. Her posture was relaxed, and her eyes held something that looked like curiosity. And this is Taya, my youngest. She is 70 years old. Hello, human, Taya said. Her voice was warm compared to her sister's. I have visited your worlds before. You have interesting food. Lyanna made a small sound of disapproval. Taya, show some dignity. I am showing dignity, Taya replied. I am being polite to our guest. Something you might try. Jake watched this exchange with interest. So there were tensions in this family, just like any other. I have a question, he said. All 4 Velari women turned to look at him. Do your daughters have any say in this arrangement? Or did you make this decision for them? Selvira's expression did not change, but Jake noticed that Lyanna's eyes flickered with something. Surprise, maybe. My daughters understand their duty, Selvira said. That's not what I asked. Taya laughed softly. He is direct. I like that. He is rude, Lyanna said. He's asking a fair question, Myra said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken, and her voice was gentle. We were not given a choice, human, but we accept our responsibility. Jake looked at each of them in turn. 3 women he had never met, from a species that had kidnapped him from his bed. And yet, he could see that they were just as trapped by this situation as he was. I will stay for 6 months, he said finally. I will learn about your people and your culture. I will let your daughters learn about me. And at the end of that time, I will make my decision. But I will not be forced into anything before then. Selvira considered this for a long moment. Then she nodded. That is acceptable. Welcome to the Velari Empire, Jake Morrison. I hope you will come to see that we are not your enemies. Jake looked at the 3 princesses standing before him. Lyanna with her cold anger, Mireille with her quiet curiosity, and Taya with her unexpected warmth. 6 months to decide the fate of 2 species. No pressure at all. We'll see, he said. The Imperial Palace on Velara Prime was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. Towers of living crystal rose toward the purple sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float on nothing. Gardens hung in the air between buildings, filled with flowers that glowed softly in dozens of colors. His quarters were larger than his parents' house back on Earth. The bed was enormous. The walls could change color with a thought, and a personal servant had been assigned to help him learn Velari ways. The servant was called Counselor Veth. She was an older Velari woman with kind eyes and a patient voice. Every day, she taught Jake about their language, their customs, and their history. The Velari do not show strong emotions in public, Veth explained one morning. It is considered primitive and dangerous. We believe that feelings should be controlled through logic and meditation. So you never laugh? Never cry? Jake asked. We do, but only in private. Among close family members. Veth paused. You humans express your emotions very freely. Many Velari find this disturbing. Jake thought about this. Maybe that's why your princess thinks I'm an animal. Veth did not deny it, which told Jake everything he needed to know. As the weeks passed, Jake was required to spend time with each of the 3 princesses. High Princess Selvira had arranged these meetings as part of the trial period, giving him a chance to know them and them to know him. His first extended meeting was with Lyanna. She summoned him to her study, a room filled with screens and data projections. She was working on something complicated when he arrived and did not look up for several minutes. Sit, she said finally. Jake sat. I have prepared a test for you, Lyanna said. She waved her hand, and a complex puzzle appeared in the air between them. It was made of geometric shapes that moved and shifted. This is a standard Valari intelligence assessment. No human has ever solved it. Jake studied the puzzle. The shapes were moving in patterns, but the patterns kept changing. Trying to predict them logically would take hours of calculation, but Jake noticed something. The shapes were not completely random. They were responding to each other, like dancers in a group. When one shape moved left, another would move right to balance it. Instead of trying to calculate, Jake watched the whole picture. He let his mind relax and looked for the flow instead of the formula. After 10 minutes, he reached out and touched 3 shapes in quick succession. The puzzle collapsed into a single point of light and then disappeared. Lyanna stared at him. For just a moment, her cold mask slipped, and he saw pure shock underneath. "That is not how it is supposed to be solved," she said. "But I did solve it," Jake replied. Lyanna's expression hardened again. Luck. It was luck. She turned back to her screens, dismissing him, but Jake had seen her face. She was not as certain as she pretended. His meeting with Myrae was different. She invited him to the Cultural Archives, a vast library filled with art and music from across the Valari Empire. She seemed nervous as she showed him around, her 4 hands fidgeting with her robes. "I have studied human culture," she said quietly. "Your paintings, your books, your films. They are very different from ours." "Different how?" Jake asked. "They are full of emotion. Sadness, joy, anger, love. We have such works in our ancient history, but they are considered immature now, primitive." Jake had brought his guitar with him, one of the few personal items he had been allowed to keep. He had not played it since arriving. "Would you like to hear some human music?" he asked. Myrae's eyes widened slightly. "Yes, I would like that very much." Jake sat down and began to play a simple song. It was an old folk tune his grandmother had taught him, about missing home and hoping to return someday. His voice was not perfect, but the song was honest. When he finished, Myrae was standing very still. Her hands were pressed against her chest, and her black eyes were wet with tears. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Why does it make me feel this way?" "That's what music is supposed to do," Jake said gently. "It helps us feel things we cannot put into words." Myrae shook her head quickly, as if trying to clear it. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Jake let her go. He understood that she needed time. Taya was the easiest to talk to. She did not summon him to formal meetings. Instead, she appeared at his door one night with a hooded cloak in her hands. "Come with me," she said. "I want to show you something." She led him through secret passages and hidden doors until they emerged in the lower districts of the city, far below the floating gardens and crystal towers. Here, the streets were crowded and dirty. The Valari who lived here wore simple clothing, and many of them looked sick. "This is the part of our world that my mother does not show visitors," Taya said. "The genetic decline affects everyone, not just the royal family. These people are dying. Their children are dying." Jake saw a young Valari mother holding a baby who was too thin and too pale. The baby was not crying, as if it did not have the strength. "Can I help?" Jake asked. Taya looked at him strangely. "Why would you want to? These are not your people." "They're people," Jake said simply. "That's enough." He spent the next few hours using his xenobiology training to examine sick children and suggest treatments. The local doctors were suspicious at first, but when his ideas began to work, they listened more carefully. When they finally returned to the palace, Taya was quiet for a long time. "I have met many aliens," she said at last. "Diplomats, traders, soldiers. All of them wanted something from us. You are the first one who gave something without asking for anything in return. Humans call it paying it forward," Jake said. "You help someone when you can, and maybe someday someone will help you when you need it." Taya smiled, and for the first time, Jake felt like he had made a real friend on this strange world. 1 week later, a servant tried to poison his food. Jake noticed only because the soup smelled slightly wrong. His training in alien biology had made him sensitive to unusual chemicals. He did not drink it, and later that night, guards arrested the servant. Taya was the first to reach him after the arrest. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "I have been watching the staff. Some of them work for Senator Korth. He wants you dead." Jake felt cold. "Who is Senator Korth?" "My mother's greatest enemy. He believes that mixing human and Valari blood would destroy our civilization. He would rather let our species die than accept help from your kind." Jake looked at the soup that almost killed him and understood that his 6 months on Valara Prime would be more dangerous than he had imagined. 3 months had passed since Jake arrived on Valara Prime. The assassination attempt had changed everything. Guards followed him everywhere now. His meals were tested before he could eat them. He was not allowed to leave the royal wing without an escort. He felt more like a prisoner than a guest. But something else had changed too. The 3 princesses had started visiting him more often, and their conversations had grown deeper. Lyanna came to his quarters late one evening. She told the guards to wait outside and closed the door behind her. Her face was the same cold mask as always, but there was something different in her eyes. "I need to ask you questions about the assassination attempt," she said, "for the official investigation." "Of course," Jake said. "What do you want to know?" But Lyanna did not ask about the poison or the servant. Instead, she stood by his window and looked out at the night sky for a long time. "Why are you still here?" she asked finally. "After someone tried to kill you. After everything. Why do you stay?" Jake considered the question carefully. "Because I made a promise to stay for 6 months. And because I want to understand your people before I decide anything. We have not given you many reasons to like us." "No," Jake agreed. "But you've given me reasons to be curious." Lyanna turned to face him. Her expression cracked slightly, showing something painful underneath. "I had a sister once," she said. "A twin. Her name was Vela. We were born together, grew up together, did everything together. When we were 40 years old, she began to get sick. The genetic decline. It took her slowly over 5 years." Jake said nothing. He just listened. "I watched her die," Lyanna continued. "I held her hand at the end. After that, I promised myself that I would never be weak again. That I would protect our family with logic and strength, not with feelings. Grief is not weakness," Jake said gently. "It means you love someone." Lyanna's eyes met his, and for just a moment, he saw the lonely girl hiding behind the cold princess. "You are strange, human," she said. "You say things that make no sense, and yet I cannot stop thinking about them." She left without another word, but something had shifted between them. Marie's visits became the highlight of Jake's days. She brought him books of Valari poetry and asked him to compare them to human works. They would sit together for hours, discussing the meaning of words and the power of stories. One afternoon, she shared a poem she had written herself. It was about a bird born in a cage who dreams of flying but fears the open sky. "It is not very good," she said nervously. "It's beautiful," Jake said honestly. "And it's brave. Writing about your feelings takes courage." Myre looked down at her hands. "I have never shown my writing to anyone before. The other Valari would think it is foolish, emotional. Then, they're missing something wonderful." Myre smiled, and it transformed her whole face. "You really mean that, don't you? You are not just being polite." "I never learned how to be polite," Jake joked. "Ask your sister." Myre laughed softly. It was a small sound, but it felt like a victory. "I have never had a friend before," she admitted. "In the royal family, Everyone is either a rival or a servant. There is no room for friendship. Jake reached out and touched her hand gently. Well, you have one now. If you want. Tears fell from Marie's black eyes. She did not wipe them away. I want, she whispered. Waya continued to sneak Jake out of the palace whenever she could. They visited the lower districts together, bringing medicine and food to the families there. Jake taught the local doctors new techniques, and Taya translated his words into formal Velari. The common people began to talk about the strange human who helped without asking for payment. Some called him a hero. Others called him a fool. But all of them remembered his kindness. One night, as they walked back through the secret passages, Taya asked him a question that had clearly been bothering her for a long time. Why do you help them? These people have nothing to offer you. Their gratitude cannot change your situation. Why waste your time? Jake thought about his answer carefully. There was a man in my village on Earth, he said. His name was Henry. He was old and poor, and he spent every weekend feeding homeless people in the park. Someone asked him once why he did it when he had barely enough for himself. He said that helping others was how he stayed human. I don't understand. It means that kindness is not about getting something back. It's about who you choose to be. I help because helping is the right thing to do. That's enough. Taya was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that surprised him. I think my mother chose better than she knew when she chose you. A week later, High Princess Elvira summoned Jake to her private chambers. She was sitting by a window, looking out at her empire. She looked older than before, and Jake realized that she was sick too. You have been watching us, she said, learning about us. But I have been watching you too. And what have you learned? Jake asked. That you are more than I expected. Elvira turned to face him. I chose you for your genetics, Jake Morrison. I read your files and your research. But I also read your personal letters. The ones you wrote to your family, to your friends. I chose you because you seemed kind. Seemed? I have lived over 400 years. I have learned not to trust appearances. But my daughters, she paused. They have changed since you arrived. Leanna smiles sometimes when she thinks no one is watching. Myre has started writing poetry again. Taya talks about paying things forward. Jake was not sure what to say. I brought you here to save my species, Elvira continued. But I think you might be saving my children instead. You are teaching them to feel. They already knew how to feel, Jake said. They just needed permission. Elvira studied him for a long moment. I am going to grant you a request. You may contact your family. Tell them you are safe. That night, Jake sat in front of a communication screen and saw his younger sister Amy for the first time in 3 months. She looked worried and tired, but her face lit up when she saw him. Jake, where are you? They told me you were on a classified mission. I'm okay, Amy. I'm safe. He paused, searching for the right words. I'm somewhere far away, doing something important. When are you coming home? Jake looked around at his beautiful prison, thought about the 3 princesses who were becoming his friends, and felt the weight of 2 civilizations pressing down on his shoulders. I don't know, he said honestly, but I promise I'll explain everything someday. After the call ended, Jake sat alone in the darkness, wondering if he would ever see Earth again. 5 months had passed. Jake had become a familiar presence in the palace, but he was also the most controversial figure in the empire. Half the Velari Senate wanted to welcome him. The other half wanted to execute him. Senator Korath stood in the great Senate chamber, his forearms raised in righteous anger. This human pollutes our bloodline. Any children born from this union will be monsters. Abominations. They will never be fit to rule. High Princess Elvira sat on her throne, but her voice was weaker than before. The genetic decline was claiming her too. "The human has proven his worth," she said. "He has helped our people in the lower districts. He has shown courage and compassion. Compassion is a human weakness." Korath shouted. "We are Velari. We are strong. We do not need their primitive emotions." The Senate descended into chaos. Voices rose and fell as politicians argued about the future of their species. A vote was scheduled for the following week, but the vote never happened as planned. 3 days before the Senate session, High Princess Elvira collapsed in her chambers. The royal physicians worked through the night, but they could not hide the truth. The High Princess was dying. The genetic decline had finally caught up with her ancient body. News spread quickly through the palace. Lyanna took over official duties, but her face was pale with fear. Myre spent hours by their mother's bedside, reading to her. Taya paced the corridors like a caged animal, unable to sit still. Jake wanted to help, but there was nothing he could do. This was a family crisis, not something for an outsider. Then the plague came. It started in the lower districts. Among the poor families Jake had been helping, children began to get sick overnight. Fever, paralysis, and then death within days. The disease spread like fire, jumping from neighborhood to neighborhood. The palace physicians examined the victims and gave their report with grim faces. "It is a new mutation of the genetic decline," they explained to Lyanna. "Instead of developing slowly over years, it attacks the nervous system directly. We have never seen anything like it. Can you treat it?" Lyanna demanded. "No, we have no treatment. We have no cure." Jake was listening from the corner of the room. He had not been invited to this meeting, but Taya had brought him anyway. Something about the symptoms bothered him. He had read about them before, but where? Then it clicked. "Wait," he said. Everyone turned to look at him. The paralysis that starts in the legs and moves upward. The breathing problems. The nerve damage. On Earth, we have a disease that works the same way. It's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. The chief physician looked at him with contempt. Human diseases are not relevant to Velari biology. The mechanism is the same, Jake insisted. The immune system attacks the nervous system. On Earth, we treat it with plasma transfer therapy. We filter the blood and remove the harmful antibodies. Impossible, the physician said. We cannot filter Velari blood. Our biology is too different. But I know Velari biology, Jake said. I've been studying it for 5 months. I can adapt the technique. I can make it work. Lyanna stared at him. You want to experiment on our dying children. I want to save them. It's different. If you are wrong, hundreds will die. If we do nothing, thousands will die. Jake met her eyes steadily. I know you don't trust me. I know you might never trust me. But those are children down there. Let me try. Lyanna looked at her sisters. Myre nodded slowly. Taya's jaw was set with determination. The chief physician shook his head. This is madness. I will not allow a human to. You will allow it because I command it, Lyanna said. Her voice was ice. Jake Morrison has proven himself more than you have. He will lead the treatment team. The physician fell silent in shock. Jake did not waste time celebrating. He gathered every medical text he could find on Velari physiology. He worked with the more open-minded physicians to design a filtration system that could handle Velari blood. He tested and adjusted and tested again. For 3 days, Jake did not sleep. He drank coffee that Taya brought him and ate food that Myre placed in front of him. He barely noticed either. The first patients were children too sick to survive much longer anyway. Their parents agreed to the experimental treatment because there was no other hope. Jake watched the filtration machines work, his heart pounding. If he had made a mistake, if his calculations were wrong, these children would die because of him. Hours passed. Then a day. Then 2 days. On the morning of the third day, a little girl opened her eyes. She looked at her mother and spoke in a weak voice. "I'm hungry." Her mother burst into tears. The physician standing nearby checked his instruments 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. The treatment worked. Over the next week, Jake trained teams of physicians to perform the procedure. They set up filtration stations across the lower districts. Thousands of children were treated, and most of them survived. The plague was contained. On the 8th day, Jake finally stopped working. He was standing in a medical tent, surrounded by sleeping children who would live because of him. His body felt like it was made of lead. His vision was blurring. "You need to rest," Lyanna said from behind him. Jake turned to look at her. She was standing in the entrance of the tent, still wearing her official robes from a Senate meeting. "There's still more work to do," he said. "There will always be more work. Right now, you need to sleep." Jake took a step toward her, and his legs gave out. The world tilted sideways. Lyanna caught him before he hit the ground. Her forearms held him gently, supporting his weight as easily as if he were a child. "Stubborn human," she murmured. But there was no anger in her voice. Jake looked up at her face. For the first time since he had met her, she was smiling. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving our children." "Thank you for letting me try," Jake replied. Lyanna carried him back to the palace herself, refusing to let the guards help. Word spread quickly through the city. The cold eldest princess, carrying the human hero in her arms. The image became a symbol. Something had changed in the Volari Empire. Something that could not be undone. In his sickbed, recovering from exhaustion, Jake received a message from High Princess Elvira. She was still too weak to leave her chambers, but she had heard what happened. Her message was simple. "You came to save our species. Instead, you are saving our souls. I was right to choose you, Jake Morrison. I only wish I had found you sooner." Jake held the message in his hands and wondered what the future would bring. Jake's 6 months were almost over. The Senate vote had been rescheduled for the final day of his trial period. Everyone in the Empire was waiting to see what would happen. News of Jake's role in stopping the plague had spread across every Volari world. Common people spoke his name with respect and gratitude. Parents told their children about the human who had saved so many lives. In the lower districts, artists had painted murals showing Jake working among the sick, but Senator Korath refused to accept defeat. On the night before the Senate vote, Jake woke to the sound of explosions. Armed soldiers were storming the palace, wearing the colors of Korath's faction. Alarms screamed through the corridors. A coup. Jake grabbed the small knife he kept under his pillow and ran toward the throne room. He found the 3 princesses there, surrounded by palace guards who were badly outnumbered. High Princess Elvira was lying on a floating medical bed, too weak to stand but refusing to leave her daughters. Korath walked through the doors with 100 soldiers behind him. His face was twisted with righteous fury. "The royal family is finished," he declared. "The High Princess is dying, and her daughters have betrayed our species by welcoming human contamination. I am taking control of the Empire to save our people from extinction. By killing us?" Lyanna demanded. "By murdering the royal bloodline? You are no longer worthy of that bloodline." Korath's eyes found Jake. "And you, the cause of all this corruption." He walked toward Jake slowly, enjoying the moment. "I will give you one chance, human. Denounce these princesses publicly. Tell our people that you reject them, that the arrangement was slavery, that humans want nothing to do with the Volari. Do this, and I will send you home safely. Refuse, and you will die here tonight." Jake looked at Korath. Then he looked at the 3 princesses who had become his friends. At Lyanna, who had shown him her grief. At Myrae, who had shared her poetry. At Taya, who had taught him about her world. "No," Jake said. Korath's eyes narrowed. "No, no, I will not denounce them. I will not betray them. They have shown me more honor and kindness than you could ever understand. Then you choose death." Korath raised his hand to signal his soldiers. But before he could give the order, the three princesses moved to stand in front of Jake. Lyanna spoke first. "If you kill him, you kill me." Myray stood beside her. "Jake Morrison taught me what friendship means. I will not abandon him." Taya completed the line. "This human showed me what courage looks like. I would rather die beside him than live under your rule." The soldiers hesitated. These were not enemies. These were their princesses, the daughters of the woman they had served their whole lives. "Do not be foolish," Korath growled. "Stand aside." "We will not," Lyanna said. Her voice was calm and cold. "And neither will they." She pointed toward the main entrance. Palace guards were pouring in, led by Counselor Veth, but Veth was no longer wearing servant's robes. She was wearing the armor of the Imperial Guard, and she carried a weapon in each of her 4 hands. "Counselor Veth is the head of palace security," Lyanna explained to Jake with a small smile. "She has been since before I was born. We were never as unprotected as Korath believed." Korath's soldiers found themselves surrounded. The fight was brief. Within minutes, the senator was on his knees in chains, and his followers were being led away. The coup had failed. 3 days later, the Senate voted. With Korath gone and public opinion firmly on Jake's side, the decision was unanimous. The arrangement would continue. Jake was welcomed as an official member of the royal household, but High Princess Salvira had one more thing to say. She appeared before the Senate despite her weakness, supported by her daughters on either side. "I brought Jake Morrison here to save our species," she said. Her voice was thin but clear. "I thought he would give us strong genetics and healthy children. I was thinking like a scientist, calculating costs and benefits." She paused to catch her breath. "But Jake Morrison gave us something more valuable than genetics. He gave us back our emotions. He taught my daughters to feel again. He showed our people that kindness is not weakness. He saved our souls when he saved our children." She turned to look at Jake directly. "I do not know how much longer I will live, but I will die knowing that the future of our empire is in good hands. Human hands." The Senate chamber erupted in applause. That evening, Jake met with the 3 princesses privately in the garden, where he had first seen the beauty of Valara Prime. The stars were out, and the floating flowers glowed softly around them. "The Senate has made its decision," Jake said, "but I want to hear from you. Each of you." Lyanna stepped forward first. Her eyes were wet, something Jake had never seen before. "I spent 100 years building walls around my heart," she said. "You knocked them down in 6 months. I do not want you to stay because of politics or treaties. I want you to stay because you are the first person who ever made me feel safe being myself." Tears rolled down her silver cheeks. She did not wipe them away. Myray came next, holding a small book in her hands. "I wrote this for you," she said. "Poems about everything I felt since you arrived. The fear, the confusion, the joy. You gave me permission to feel things I had been hiding my whole life. Please stay and help me learn to feel more." She pressed the book into his hands. Finally, Taya approached. She was smiling, but her eyes were serious. "You taught me about paying it forward," she said. "About helping people without expecting anything back. I want to spend my life doing that, but I want to do it with you beside me." Jake looked at the 3 women who had become his family. He thought about Earth, about his sister, about the life he had left behind. Then he thought about the children in the lower districts, who called his name when he walked past. About the murals painted in his honor. about the feeling of belonging he had found in this strange and beautiful place. "I'll stay," he said. "Not because of duty, not because of treaties, because you are my family now." 1 year later, Jake stood in the palace garden holding a baby girl. She had silver skin like her mother, but only 2 arms like her father. Her eyes were dark, but when the light caught them just right, there was a hint of brown. Lyanna stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. Myrae was reading poetry to a group of children nearby. Taya was planning her next trip to help the lower districts. High Princess Selvira had passed away 2 months ago, peaceful and content. Her last words had been about her granddaughter. "She will change everything," Selvira had whispered. The first of a new generation. Jake looked down at his daughter and smiled. She grabbed his finger and held on tight. Across the empire, hope was growing. The genetic decline had slowed. New treatments were being developed. And in the lower districts, children played beneath murals of the human who had come to save a dying world, not with weapons, not with technology, but with compassion. Jake kissed his daughter's forehead and whispered the words his grandmother used to say to him. "Be kind, little one. That's how we stay human." And in the stars above Valara Prime, a new future was beginning.